Well, good afternoon. It's a nice, cool afternoon here in South Texas. We don't get too many of those days, but it's a perfect day for a warm cup of chocolate and a book, maybe a book on poetry. Today, we're going to be talking to a poet. I was looking at some old poems and reading different things, and I ran across some poets talking about poets. And Margaret Atwood, she said that the genesis of a poem is a cluster of words. And there's some truth in that, I believe. But I really liked Emily Dickinson. This is what she said. I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off. Then I know that it is poetry. Today's guest is a poet. Her name is Lulu Smyles, and her book is called Choose Your Own Self-Discovery, Ink in the Chaos. Lulu, she's a poet, a creator, interactive, reflective literature. She says you don't have to be who the world told you to be. You get to write it your way. And one of the reviews on her book, her reader said, Lulu has created something genuinely unique, a guided journey where each poem becomes a doorway into understanding yourself a little better. Lulu Smyles, welcome to the Last Storyteller podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Jim. Thank you so much. I'm doing well. It is cold where I am, so I'm definitely trying to stay in.
Where are you coming from?
I am also in Texas.
I'm down in close to San Antonio area, so it's not really cold compared to what is in other parts of our great nation. But it's cold enough for me to put on a sweater. So, listen, your book, Choose Your Own Self-Discovery, Ink in the Chaos, is a book of poems, but it's got a very unique approach to it. Tell our listeners about what you've done with this book of poetry.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books in elementary school,
I do remember those.
where, okay, so the poetry book is kind of has that same premise. So all of the poems are, I'm sorry for the dogs in the background. I've got a lot of them. um, so all of the poems I've written, um, basically it's just a short poem. And then at the end of the poem, the reader is given basically two choices. Um, Depending on what choice you choose, how the poem particularly has made you feel or felt like, you know, however you've responded to it, depending on what you choose, it either leads you to another poem or some kind of journaling or processing page, basically a journaling page.
Yeah,
And then from there, you either go back to the next poem or you continue through the poetry process.
I found it quite fascinating how you did that. It's the reader is walking along a path and you're giving them, well, forks in the road or forks in the path, if you will, to follow along. It's pretty fascinating. How long have you been writing poetry?
Um, I've been writing poetry since I was before a teenager. So that is well over 30 years.
So who inspires you?
And well, you've mentioned Emily Dickinson, and she is absolutely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So,
No, she's great. And
but I like, the older poets.
well, you published under Poetry by Women, and there are some really Emily Dickinson and the ones that were writing before there were keyboards. There's so many great poets out there. Even today, Maggie Nelson, Sharon Oates, Natalie Diaz, all female poets, all excellent in their work of poetry. Now, you also, in your book, you self-published this book and you published it on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell our listeners, many of our listeners, excuse me, are indie poets themselves and indie writers who are trying to get their books out there. What was the process like for you, uh, publishing, self-publishing, self-editing, all the things that come with putting a book together? What was that journey like for you?
Well, I didn't use an editor or anything like that. I mean, it's poetry. There's not really much wrong you could do in like grammar and punctuation and things like that. So I didn't I self-edited it. Um I you can't just like have a manuscript or anything and just like upload it. There's like a whole process to it, which was a huge learning curve for me. Um Seeing as at the time that I did it, which I had just published in August of this year, but at the time that I did it, I didn't have a laptop or anything, so I had to do it all on my phone. And Amazon KDP is not set up for that process. Like everything is extremely small, very hard to read, kind of cumbersome. So um, there were quite a few challenges, even getting the dimensions of the book cover proper, like just everything. And then you submit it and then you wait for it to pass their quality assurance test basically. And then, you kind of go from there.
Did you do your own
So for
cover?
me personally, actually, I had my daughter do the artwork and then I used Canva to kind of uh brighten it, I guess.
Right.
And
She's a good
get
artist.
thank you. um to get the color how I wanted it and then like to align the title and the picture together. So I used Canva for the to put the actual cover together because it will give you the exact measurements, size measurements that you need for Amazon KDP.
And that's really good too. I started dealing with KDP and Amazon a long time ago, and in the beginning, it was very, very difficult. And these different platforms or websites that come along now, like Canva, that help us, especially an indie author, be able to do all that stuff. Many of us who like to write, whether it be stories or poetry, can't draw a flower, much less the
I
much less
can't.
much less the cover of a book, right? And so we do depend on those things. The other thing about your poetry, when I talk to different writers about their process, and writing a story, there's a beginning and there's an end, and there's a process that you go there to get from one to another. With poetry, it's a little bit different, though. What's your daily routine? How do you write your poetry? Is it come out of nowhere? Do you sit down and think I'm going to write a poem about this or about that? How does it all born and turned into poetry?
It's it's not a daily thing. It's very, even the poems in Ink and the Chaos were just very, just things would come to me and I would just put them together, or a feeling would come over me and I'd just write a 3 or 4 lines down and I'd be like, yep, that looks good enough for a poem to me. So it's not really I don't sit too much and think, what do I want to convey in this poem. It's more about just kind of what hits me at the time.
So with your prompts, you have a verse or poem, and then you have the prompt in there directing the reader to go to a different page, one or two different pages. When you were doing that, when writing those, you wrote a piece and then you prompted them to go somewhere else. Did you already have in mind where you wanted them to go, or were you writing that as you went along?
No, so what I did was I wrote all of the poems first. So I just kind of wrote poems, wrote poems, wrote poems. With that one, it was slightly an easy process because I guess at the time just had a lot to get off my chest. Like I was kind of going through a lot. So the poems kind of came a little bit easier. And so I just did the poems first, and then as I was reading through them, I would write the prompts. And I knew when I started writing it that I wanted people to feel like this was their own journey, not my journey. Not, you know, because there's a lot of times people don't know how to say what they feel or even how to feel themselves, you know? So I wanted to make sure that the reader had enough pages in there that they could reflect on their own thoughts, their own processes.
And I think you've done a very good job at doing that, especially with the prompts. I thought that was what was unique about it in reading your poetry. So often today, I see poetry, either snippets of poetry here, snippets of poetry there, poetry books. There's a lot of poetry books, but poetry books are very, very hard to sell. What have you done to try to market your book, and what has been successful, or what have you tried that why you think that would never do that again?
Honestly, I haven't really done much to market it. I don't, like right now, I don't have money to run like Amazon ads or Facebook ads or anything like that. I don't typically do social media, so I don't have TikTok or Instagram or any of those things. So I haven't done much in marketing. I did join, you know, a couple of authors supporting authors type groups just to see where that would lead if anywhere. And I have met a couple of good people so far. Um, Not in person, but as good as they can be online, I guess. And yeah, I haven't really marketed it. I have ideas. Um, for me it's not it, and I've heard authors say this, oh, it's not about the money. I just want people to read it or whatever. But and that may be true for them. I'm not saying that that's not, but for me, like, this is really the kind of book that is not for everybody, because not everybody is going through, some people, they have pretty good lives or whatever and feel like maybe this doesn't hit home for them, but there are a lot of people that it might, so like I'm not, it's not about really the money for me. If it can get into the hands of even one person that it helps, then I'm good with that.
And that's good. You and I sort of met through Facebook. Facebook does have a marketing arm that just as from experience, I would avoid completely. Right. But having your friends and being out there on Facebook, and even just putting one or two of your poems out every so often, and then giving them a link to your book, you'd be surprised at how many people would like to go there. Excuse me. Poetry. like I said, poetry is it's one that's tough to market. And even when you do, I've got two books of poetry out there, and I enjoyed writing them. I like that people read them, but poetry, well, there's very, very few rich poets, right? Nobody's got money writing
Right.
poetry. And even if you do have success in marketing your book, and we're going to help with that today for sure. We're going to get your book out there, get the links to your book out there. We'll have it on the podcast, and we're going to put it out on YouTube so people get to know you and try to direct people over there. Because even with that, with selling a lot of books of poetry, you're not going to make a lot of money in today's world. You just don't. You're on you're in paperback. Have you thought about putting it on Kindle as an ebook also?
Yeah, I have thought about it, but I don't know very much about Kindle except for Kindle's not interactive, and this book, it's kind of interactive, like I would have to maybe have some type of companion book that people would have to get or something like that, unless, they just wanted to keep it, in their own kind of journal or whatever. But I'm not, um, it's kind of one of those books where you, in my opinion, you kind of have to have the hard copy to kind of really experience the journey of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like a book. I like to hold a book in my hand. I always have. When I
Yeah,
started
me too.
writing, when ebooks first came out, I swore up and down, I'll never do that. I can't dog page or dog ear a page. I can't smell a new book being opening. But then you get into this world of writers and you think, well, I've got to do that too. And then audiobooks came along. I thought I will never listen to a book on audio. I'd never put a book on audio. And now I probably listen to more books than I read just because of the amount of time that I spend on the road and traveling. It's much easier to do that. So I don't want to eliminate any of those possibilities. But I think, and if any of our listeners know, put in the comments, I think in Kindle, you can actually have links inside the book itself where you have the prompt and it says go to page 18 or poem 18 where the reader can touch that and it takes them to that. I might be wrong on there, but I think I remember reading that. I don't know how to do it. If anybody does or have any more information on that, be sure and let us know. Because that would be Kindle is actually a pretty good way to get your book out there very inexpensively, and people read it on their phone. You're zooming right now on your phone, and you can read a book on your phone too. I was reading through yours, and I've ran across one line that really it just sort of it stopped me and made me think. And I know you mentioned a few minutes ago that this is for the writers, not so much for you. I mean, for the readers, not so much for the writer, not so much for you. But I think part of you is in every poem. And in this one, the line says, I looked in the mirror today and saw a face I never knew, distant, sad, worn, and lost. Now I ask myself, was your love worth the cost? First of all, it's a beautifully written line. It stopped me. I read it a few times. And one of the things that I've always enjoyed about poetry is not knowing what the poet, what they meant. They're not shoving it down at me. And it gave me the freedom to think, what does Lulu Smyles mean in this verse, in these one words, in these few words? Now I ask myself, was your love worth the cost? Was that you seeking someone's love and a cost to you?
That is it is kind of two-sided. But the heart of it is being so lost in giving so much of myself to be a part of somebody's life and losing who I was in that process. And so I'm really asking myself, was the love that I gave worth the cost of losing myself?
So you were talking to the person in the mirror.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's one of the things I love about poetry. It's absolutely one of the things I love about poetry because that's not the direction my mind went. And that was okay too. See, because the feeling that I had was sad and lost in reading those words. And you had a different meaning in it. And that's one of the great things. And listen, you folks out there that maybe you don't read poetry, unless it's written on a bathroom wall somewhere. Pick up a poetry book and read it and enjoy it. It's an incredible art. It's a lost art that's out there right now. And Lulu, you've grasped the idea of taking a story, a life story, your life story, and condensing it down into as few words as needed. Right? There's so much fluff when we write that we have to put in there. We look for word counts, we look for chapters, we work for that stuff like that. But poetry breaks it down to the bare minimum. So tell the readers how we can get your book. And I think I might have lost her. We'll give her a minute to get back on, and that's technology today. Uh,
Yeah.
oh, you're
Okay.
back. Oh, good, 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 good. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, you did freeze up for a minute, but now I've had to move to a kind of darker spot.
That's
Let's see if I can
okay.
go back in the light here.
That's okay. No, no,
Okay.
no.
Um, so I kind of lost the last, maybe 10 seconds of you. You froze up, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
all
I was
right.
gonna, I want
Um,
you, we want to sell some books. So tell our readers how they can get your book and tell me if you have more books in mind, more poetry that you're working on now that's going to be coming out in the future.
so the book right.
Patience, my friends. The book is on Amazon for sure. And we'll put the link to the book. It's called Choose Your Own Self-Discovery, Ink in the Cast. We're going to put that inside the show notes, and that'll be there. And oh yeah, you're back alive.
um, and yes, this is basically book one of kind of a series. I don't know how many are going to be in the series. I have a million ideas.
Good for you.
Like I don't just write poetry. I do, short stories and things like that too, but I don't know. I'm not delving into the short story. I'm not going to write a book of short stories. I'm going to strictly probably I'm probably going to strictly stick to poetry, and I mean, I've got all kinds of things to just, when a poem hits me, it hits me, and sometimes it's, it could be 5 or 10 a day. Sometimes it could be none for a while. So, um, but yeah, I have book two. Hopefully, I'll be publishing book two, which is called Choose Your Own Self Discovery Pages of Becoming, um, hopefully by February of next year.
Well, good for you. Well, let me know for sure, and we'll get that information out to the folks too on some follow-up stuff. If you're traveling through South Texas anytime soon and you're in New Braunfels, just hit me up, and we'll go uh, get a cup of coffee and share some poetry. So it's been a real pleasure.
Sounds good.
It's been a real pleasure meeting you. And again, all these will be in the show notes, both on the podcast and on YouTube. We want to sell some books. I know you don't want to make any money, but we still want to sell some books. So
Right. I mean, the money part is good, of course, very helpful, but yeah, like I said, if it helps one person, I'm happy with that.
That's a
I
wonderful.
think the idea is I just want, for me personally, I just want people to feel good about who they are, you know? And if my journey can help them on their journey, great, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a wonderful sentiment. So thank you again. And let's go sell some books. You've been listening to Addicted to Faith, the Last Storyteller podcast. You can find it on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your entertainment. Thank you for listening.